Welcome, everybody. Happy Day of the Dead. My name is Whitney Zeigler. I'm the founder and CEO of Big Rocks Organizing. We're located in the Portland, Oregon metro area and serve clients in Southwest Washington and in Oregon. And our team helps people through life transitions. And today we're going to be talking about the ultimate life transition with some of our favorite guides along the way. So I'm happy to introduce you to some of those folks. And actually, I'm going to have them introduce themselves. And then we'll jump in and get started with questions. This is going to be really interactive. So please, bring your questions. Don't be shy. Don't hesitate. Jennifer, can I start with you?
Sure, let me unmute myself. Hi, I'm Jennifer Trundy. I'm an elder law attorney with Rose Elder Law. I do probate, which is what we're going to be talking about today, and also Medicaid qualification, estate planning, such as wills and trusts, which we also will probably talk about today, and other guardianships, conservatorships, things like that. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. How about Deanna and Maryann? I don't know if you want to take turns or if you want to introduce yourselves at the same time.
Sure, we like to do things Dutch. So I'm Maryann, and my business partner Deanna is here too. We are Evening Star End of Life Doula Services, and we've been serving the Portland community and beyond since 2018. And just some background, because we know this is not a very well-known service quite yet, that doulas are essentially members of the community that have training and or experience working with those at end of life or dealing with serious illness. And we differ, we are non-medical, and we offer holistic, emotional, and practical support for the dying individual and their loved ones.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deanna, and to continue where Maryann left off, a big part of what doulas do is help to normalize death and dying, and we do that through education and conversation and role modeling. We share information that really helps empower individuals and families to make choices based on their values. And this can help folks lead to feeling more in control with their end-of-life experience and have an experience that's more aligned with who they are. And like Maryann mentioned, we are definitely non-medical, and we are a really nice complement to palliative and hospice care teams. And we're also really well connected with the community, with other end-of-life service providers like estate attorneys and celebrants, home funeral guides, grief support, personal organizers, whatever somebody might need at the end of life. And so we can really help folks round out their support team. So that's our little super brief intro to what doulas are.
Thank you so much. Deborah, are you in a good place to introduce yourself?
I can. My name is Deborah Threadgill. I'm co-owner of Threadgill's Memorial Services with my husband, Ron Threadgill. We have been in the industry since 1999 with Threadgill's Memorial for the last 17 years. So I am a licensed funeral director. I've also been trained in home funerals down in California. I've also received not training, but I attended the end-of-life doula training several years ago. So so I hang out with the Evening Star doulas. They're my comrades, I call them. And I've also worked with Jennifer. So we have a lot of information that we like to provide to people, helping them prepare for end of life. So I have different electronic files that I can send to you, Whitney, that you can spread out. So anyway, fire away at the questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. Does anybody have a burning question right off the bat? Deborah, maybe a fun one to get us started, because this can be a pretty heavy topic. So
I have one.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Kyle.
I just realized I was mute as I was like, I've got one. So my mom is recovering from a brain trauma injury that she sustained in September of 2022. And she's doing okay now. But we just had an incident at an airport where we had to fly her to the hospital and spent 12 hours in emergency. She's been doing Swedish death cleaning before I even knew what it was called. And then I saw the show and like, she's doing that. So I guess my burning question is, I'm happy to hear what Deborah's expertise is, because it's something I've been kind of asking my therapist for, is grief counseling, because I'm in anticipatory grieving right now and have been for a long time. And as much as we're trying to prepare documents and get things signed over for me, I kind of want to know when my mom does pass, what are the first things I need to do?
So there are several things in preparation that you can do weeks, days ahead of time. And Deanna and Maryann can help you with that. We usually send out a form that you can fill out that's the information necessary for her death certificate. And it's like a social security number. A lot of times people like to just get that out of the way. It's something that's going to have to be done. But if you can do it when you're a little bit more cognizant of your feelings, then that's easier. Then depending on anything else, we have a care packet that we send out that I'll make available to Whitney. It kind of addresses the needs of the caregiver in terms of staying hydrated, taking care of yourself, allowing family members to help you. And then just various things like that. And I'm sure that Deanna and Maryann can kind of share some of the things that they've done. But what we know about grief is that there's really no right or wrong to how someone grieves. And that the first thing we tell people is don't let anyone tell you how you should grieve. And you just need to be able to allow yourself to grieve. And then sometimes it's helpful to find a support system of people who are in a similar situation, whether it's children of parents that they've lost their parents, or siblings, or sometimes young widows or widowers. They need to have that, being able to compare what they're feeling with other people, their age group or their situation. So that's something. And then we have access to some grief counselors that can kind of help you through the process. But it is a process, and there's really no end to it. You just feel that you can maybe be a little more effective with how you get on with your life. So does that help kind of get you started?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm actually taking steps right now to write a proposal to my boss to ask if I can be an independent contractor, work part-time and only from home, so that I can spend more time with my mom. And if my boss, who is a really good friend of mine, if she says, no, I need you here full-time, I will be retiring this month.
Okay.
So those are my choices. So I'm kind of putting things in preparation now, wanting to spend more time with my mom. She's promised me 6 more years. She'll be 89 this month. But I just know that even though we've been preparing for so long, it eats away at my heart every day.
Mm-hmm.
I just think of like when she's gone, that's it. And she's my family. There's just the 2 of us left.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I learned through the end-of-life doula training, and Maryann and Deanna can address this, is the legacy project of something that you can work on with your mother, whether it be a scrapbook or a video or anything that suits your needs, that helps you then preserve your mother's legacy, preserve her memories.
That's wonderful.
And I think this is one of the fabulous things about end-of-life doulas, is that they work with families to establish the kind of legacy project that, again, meets their needs. For some people it's a scrapbook, for other people it's a video. I know I'm going to be working with someone that does she's going to be recording my stories. And Gloria Nussbaum, she does reel to reel. And I've actually been putting her off for years because I've been telling her I'm too busy. But the truth of the matter is, I'm like everyone else. I keep thinking, oh, well, you know, I can do this next year. I can do this next year. And so I'll be doing that with her. It's basically, she has questions and I can put my story on recording. So some of those things, and like I said, Deanna or Maryann can tell you and work with you in terms of a legacy project. But that's something I really, really liked about end of life doulas is to have that project that can be left behind for families.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Actually, to add on to that real quick, if she's already doing a lot of, you know, sifting and cleaning of her space, and that's kind of like a physical life story right there. And there's legacy work even to be done in that. You know, if you spend your time with your mom while she's in this process, tell me the story behind this item or object. Where'd you get it? Why did you hold on to it all these years? Who might it belong to next? And so there's a lot of work that can come out of the things that she's already doing. It's just a matter of engaging in like meaningful conversation during the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's excellent. And just so that you know, I held up. So I actually bought the Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning book and read it. Thought it was really great. And I wholeheartedly agree with what Maryann had to say is if you're going through this process anyway, to actually add another layer to it, that would be so meaningful for you and so valuable.
We did actually talk about the book in August and had a ask the organizer event around that and have a wonderful blog that Andrea, our team member, wrote about it. So we're happy to share those with you, Kyle, afterwards, if that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, and good work for you, Kyle. I know this is difficult, but honestly, I think you'll value it afterwards. And it may seem difficult now, but you'll feel so much better emotionally having done all of this preparatory work.
Yeah, and my mom has actually, talking about getting rid of stuff, she's gotten rid of things. My dad was the pack rat and he died 4 years ago. And I would have loved to have asked him about the things because he and I were very sentimental. My mom is like, we don't need that, we don't need that. So I'm in like this little empty shell of a condo that belongs to my mom and dad, and there aren't any memories here. So we're just dealing with the business side of things, the estate planning, the properties, things I'll be in charge of once she passes. I'll have a couple of different properties in different states that I'm responsible for. And to me, that's a burden, you know, things that weren't my choice to have, but now I'm going to be responsible for them and the upkeep of them. So, but yeah, we've done pretty much the cleaning part, but now I just want to enjoy time with her. And then when the time comes, I want to know who to call. And then I know it'll just happen from there, that people will be helpful and point me to the next person.
Can I jump in for a second there? Kyle, you're putting all of these various properties in a trust, correct?
I believe so. And it's because they won't go to me until she's passed, because if they did now, then there would be like a lot of money going to Uncle Sam.
Right, capital
So
gains tax.
yeah, we've talked to attorneys, in fact, we have a meeting with her attorney next Friday. So yeah, she's taking care of, she's really a good businesswoman. She had her own physical therapy practice for 50 years. So she's really got a hold on what kind of things she needs to have.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that you didn't end up with probates in a bunch of different states. So
yeah,
if they're not
thank you.
Please make sure you talk to your attorney about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things too. Around the grief piece, you know, grief begins long before someone dies. So that's a real thing. And like Deborah said, don't let anyone tell you how to grieve. There are no stages of grief. There is no timeline for grief. it is what it is for you. And then it could look completely different than other griefs you've had, other people's grief. So there are a lot of great support groups, a lot of great people doing grief work here in town. We have a lot of connections that we would be happy to connect you with if you were interested in even starting some of that now.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And there was another piece I had, but it left my brain, but I'll mention it again if it comes back. But also so good on you for doing all of this planning and the legal stuff and the paperwork beforehand, because then that will give you more time to just be with your mom as she declines and at that end of life point. And if you are interested in having people there closer to the end for you to lean on to kind of guide you and support you for your mom, that's a thing that doulas do. We understand the physical death process. We can, help you know who to call and get that all organized ahead of time. So if you don't, because, our culture, people don't know a lot about death and dying in our culture. We even deny it's going to happen. So our friends and family don't necessarily know how to support us or how to, some people step up and learn it and do it, and that's awesome. But if you don't have those people, that's the role of doulas, is to try to give this knowledge back to people. We don't come in and have an agenda or take over for you, but we're definitely there, happy to help, make phone calls for you, do some really practical support, connect you with resources, that sort of thing. So if you're feeling a little alone in this, that's where doulas come in and can really be supportive and help out.
Great. That's exactly what I need. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Call us. We'll put our information.
I got your number.
I like to compare Maryann and Deanna to be like the wind beneath your wings.
Oh.
And we will send out all of our presenters' contact information in an email afterward. And Kyle, we're sorry for what you're going through, but it sounds like you're doing all the things, and we commend you for that.
Well, thank you for having this forum too, because, the one thing I'm taking away right now is I did not understand anything about doula except for birthing babies until 10 minutes ago. So this is really fantastic.
Wonderful.
Birth doulas birth them in and we birth them out, right? Like it's kind of, it's a very similar role. It's the planning, we're not medical, but it's the planning and the support and the organization. And yeah.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for sharing your situation with us. I'm curious if anybody else has questions for our guests today.
I have some follow-up questions.
Sure.
What stage does a doula come in at?
Right now.
Right now.
whether you're sick or dying or not, we can help people anywhere. If you're an adult, you should be planning and starting to have conversations with your people and getting the paperwork in order. So you don't have to be at death's door to engage a doula. We're happy to work with perfectly healthy people who just really want to start the process, because it is really a process. There's a lot more. It's not just, oh, I did my will and my advance directives, I'm done. So much more to it than that. So
Are you before contacting Jennifer, or is it like in collaboration together?
All of it, yes. Call her now, call us now, yes. Because we are not, again, we do a lot of things, but we are not estate attorneys. So we definitely recommend having an estate attorney for that legal paperwork. We can do things like, help explain an advance directive and help you do that. That doesn't necessarily require an estate attorney, though you can do that with your attorney. But we can also let you know of, there are a lot more options at end of life than I think people are aware of. There's a lot of do-it-yourself death care that can happen, like home funerals, and you don't have to engage with a funeral director if you don't want to, or you can, like folks like Deborah are great because she'll help out here and there where needed, but she, she'll let you do a lot of it yourself if you want to, but you don't have to do that. There's a lot of disposition options that people don't know about, like green burials and water cremation and human composting and things like that. So we're here to give you a lot of information to just let you know what's out there, and not to push you in any direction or not, or to promote any one person or provider, but to give you choices and help you figure out what makes sense for you. And that's one thing I would love to hear from folks too, if they want to share. Have you experienced what you would think of as a good death? And have you experienced a death in someone that you would want to avoid for yourself at all costs? And, we could talk about ways that might have been avoided, or ways that you can have something that you saw that you liked. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to, oh, sorry. One thing I'd like to your question, Connie, is similar to hospice services, where people call them usually way too late, because it's kind of like the taboo of, I'm not ready yet, or I call them when I'm giving up, or I'm tired of fighting type of thing. That is poor languaging. So they can be called up to 6 months ahead of like a prognosis of 6 months. And we can be called in even before that. Like Deanna said, you don't even need to be ill, but we've worked with people that are just very detail focused, healthy, young, but I want to work on a vigil plan. That way, if something catastrophic happens to me and I can't speak for myself, my people know how I want them to show up at my bedside. They already know how I want my kids to be participating in my end of life. If I can't explain that to them, it's already recorded. So it can be at any point in the adult lifespan, really. But then, when you get involved with someone non-medical like this and things do start to change, we can really help get you into services like palliative and hospice much earlier, so that folks get to actually receive the benefit of those services instead of resisting them till it's kind of just stomping out fires and not really the comfort care that it's supposed to be.
Well, and I want to thank Whitney too for just this forum, because what we know is that people just don't want, we're a death phobic society. So we don't want to talk about death. And so therefore we don't until it's too late. And so the more, Deanna and Maryann and I really are on this campaign of education. And so we want to be able to educate people, and we do add, I add humor to it. I did a presentation for Washington County last month, and it was 90 minutes worth of, explaining different dispositions. And I had so much information, I was out of breath by the end of it, because there was so much information given. People were saying, I didn't know that. And that's, we're so limited in our knowledge of death. And then I was just thinking, a lot of times people like to do an exercise program, but they find that if they have a personal trainer, they're far more effective. So I look at our end-of-life doulas as like your personal trainer.
I'm so happy to hear that you can do home funerals. I've never heard that before.
Oh,
That
see,
is-
more education.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful idea.
Well, until about 150 years ago, all funerals were home funerals.
I know,
all
and
were green burials. So,
Yeah, such a
people don't
nice
really
way to do
think
it.
about how people have done it forever until, around the Civil War. That's when things changed. We can do a history lesson another time, but yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Knowledge is power. And I think our society's avoidance of death and talking about it, and it creates the nightmare situations that people fear. Because when you don't plan when you have the energy, when you're well, when your brain's intact, when you're good. And then suddenly you have to do that when you're maybe in the middle of a crisis, you're dealing with a serious illness, or maybe something happens to you and your family has to make all these decisions. That can really complicate and prolong their grief, because it can be, we've heard of people for decades second guessing decisions they made for their loved ones. So it's a gift not only to you, but to your people, to have these plans made. And even, the best laid plans aren't necessarily going to go all exactly how you want them to, but it's sure going to get you a lot closer. And so that's why we really try to normalize this. This is 100% certainty for all of us that this is going to happen, and none of us can know when. So let's talk about it and let's plan for it. It's not a failing. We're all going to do it, so, and it just really eases the way when it's been talked about, thought about, planned for.
And that's something I see often is we're living longer lives, but not necessarily better lives
Right.
because of medical interventions and medications and everything else. And my soapbox is that I think everybody should have an advance directive and a durable power of attorney, anybody over 18. And it's really important because people can't make decisions for you, and then you're adding that stress to your family of having to get a guardianship or conservatorship if you need to go into memory care, and not having those documents in place ahead of time. I have a lot of people, I'm like, you don't really have anything, you don't need a will. Everybody really does need a will, but let's plan on your end of life, and how are your family members going to get you qualified for Medicaid, and what do you want, and who do you want to make those decisions, and do you really want your kids arguing over who has to make which decision, or do you want to appoint somebody to be able to make medical decisions? Do you want to make your decisions on life support and tube feeding and all of that now, or do you want them to have to make it later? So we kind of go hand in hand with the death doulas, with the elder law attorneys, working with people to get the plan in place so that you could enjoy your family and your family can enjoy you. And listening to Kyle, she and her mom getting everything in place. And the thing that she kept saying is, I'm going to take the time so I can enjoy her last days. I can enjoy my mom. And you really want to be doing that instead of dealing with courts. Getting those documents in place ahead of time so that you don't have that stress. It's amazing how many calls I get that are, it's emergency, I have to get this done. I'm going to hospice to do a last minute will, or I was at St. Vincent's at 9 a.m. on New Year's Day a few years ago, trying to get stuff done before somebody had a surgery. And people put it off and put it off and put it off, but it's really important to get those things done. And so that you've made a decision on who can make those decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself. And if you can make them for yourself and you can do that planning, everybody that I've talked to that works with a death doula just says it's so much more relaxing. I don't know if that's the right word. And I don't want to say easy because it's never easy to lose someone, but it's peaceful. It adds some peace. It takes some of that pressure off. I've seen people who walk in and then they come out and they're just uplifted knowing that they've got the plan in place. Yeah. So it's really important to do both and do both as your schedule allows. But it sneaks up on people.
And what I want to add to that is that what I know is that, all families have some degree of dysfunction. But when you put death into the picture, then that dysfunctionality just intensifies and goes through the roof. And then, you may have had problems with your brother or sister, but suddenly now you're at war with each other. So the more planning that you do, the more your family relationships can be preserved. And there's nothing worse than me talking to someone that says, I haven't talked to my brother in 30 years. So because of one little thing or whatever, or because of, when my mom died, we all had family arguments. We haven't talked since. So, that is sad because, it really comes down to family. And the more we can preserve these relationships, the better.
And also to add to that, thinking about the queer community, When you don't have plans in place, your next of kin is who is contacted. And that can be a huge problem for folks who maybe are not in touch with their biological families, who have chosen families, especially, people in the trans community who maybe their family doesn't acknowledge their identity now or know anything about them. Maybe they haven't seen them, but those are the folks who are going to be contacted. So it's really important in the queer community as well to make sure that they can appoint the people in their chosen family who they would want to make decisions for them at the end.
And
Thank you
that's
for-
something else that I see happen often is that people that die without a plan in place of where their assets go to, it doesn't necessarily go where they want it to go or where they would want it to go. If you die intestate in the state of Oregon, the state has a plan for you. So if you die without a will, they've got a plan. And something that some people don't know is that everything goes to your spouse if you're married, unless you have children from a prior relationship. And if you have children from a prior relationship, then it gets split between your children and your spouse. I recently had a situation where a lady in her 80s, her husband died. The house was only in his name. It was a later marriage, no will. And so she had to move out of her home so it could be sold and split between his 4 children that had been estranged for 35 years. It's not what he would have wanted, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
So it's really important to get your wishes down on, and I don't care if you use me or someone else. It's really important to make sure that what you want to have happen and where you want things to go is where it goes. The other issue I see all the time is somebody who's got a family member who is going to receive things. If they don't have a will, they're going to receive it by law, and they might be receiving government benefits and they're going to get kicked off their benefits because grandma left them 20 grand, and that's not going to help them over the long term. So it's important to get things in place.
Thank you for your thoughts, everybody. What other questions do people have?
I have a question for either Maryann or Deanna. Could you talk a little bit about what a day is like for you caring for a patient?
I know you had quite the night last night. Do you want to, if you feel comfortable, share a little bit?
You want to go?
Well, first I'll just say there is no typical day. Every client is different in what they need and where it goes. Some are really just want the practical support. They're not really going there emotionally. Others really just want emotional support. But yeah, I mean, yesterday we happened to attend a planned death of one of our clients. A client took the medical aid in dying medication. And Maryann, do you want to tell a little bit more about that? I don't want to hog.
It was a really beautiful day. We did a lot of preparatory work, and they felt very clear on what they wanted the day to look like, and how the bedside environment was going to be. And we stuck to the plan as closely as possible, and it was a very peaceful departure. And then we stayed with the partner and held space for them while the logistical stuff was happening, like the funeral home coming to remove the body, and making calls to hospice. We're ready to give back the bed, and waiting for the next, inner circle of friends coming to spend time with the partner. So it was really just kind of holding the space, mentioning things that we noticed, like the clock is stopped at the same time that the person left. Just, all the little things that you can miss if you're just stomping out fires and running around like crazy. So it was just a very tiresome and lovely day. We checked in today with each other, and I'm like, are you are you tired? Yes. Oh, thank God, because I'm exhausted and I didn't want to be the only one, because this isn't every day that we get to be bedside. We do a lot of the preparatory work so that families feel confident to do as much as they can by themselves. So we're not with every client when they're dying unless they request. So it's been a little while since we've been bedside, and it's a day.
Wow, that's
It's
amazing.
holding space to that degree kind of takes it out of you, and we forget because we do a lot of our work on Zoom because a lot of our clients are just kind of in that planning stage and whatnot. But they decided they had, the kids were in last week or over the weekend to visit, and it was just the person, the partner, they were able to have a doctor come to give them the meds and us, and that was the crew, and the cat. And that is like, how honored do we feel to be chosen to be in that elite group, right? To be there for that transition for someone, and just to answer the question, what do I do now? And we say, let's make some tea. And we do, and just there to provide enough distraction when they want it, to make a phone call, to just answer questions, to just hold that space. It is quite a thing, and I talk about how kind of corny it sounds to say it's a privilege and an honor, but it seriously is. Like that, those words really capture it best.
And such a gift for the people.
Yeah.
Well, and it is, and I just want to add to that, because I get phone calls because some of the death with dignity, some of them they like us because we're personal. We do our own transports, so we'll get some phone calls, and we've actually have people that have actually had to come here out of state. I mean, they choose Oregon, they've come from Texas, they've come from Arkansas. They're here, they have to stay for 2 weeks. They're here by themselves sometimes, and I can see the value, Deanna and Maryann, because there's one person, she was here by herself, and when we got there, we just kind of helped her through it. But there was fortunately he went quickly. There was another one, she's from Oregon, but it was the worst case scenario. It took her 18 hours to leave. And the sister, by the time we got there, the sister was absolutely exhausted. And so things like that, I can see where you or Maryann can be helpful, kind of in letting them know, this can happen, and let's make some tea. So yeah, each scenario is so different. And they don't always tell you up front that it could take longer than an hour, but because they don't want to upset people. But the reality is that it could take several hours.
Yeah, I also volunteer with an organization called End of Life Choices Oregon, and there are several. There's one in Washington. They're separate, but there are volunteer organizations popping up in the states where the law is legal, and they're volunteers who help walk people through the process and help them know what to expect. You can't ever tell anyone how long it's going to take, because you can't ever know. The range is like a minute to 18 or 20 hours, right? So, but yeah, these clients, we were there in a doula capacity, and they had just worked directly with the doctor's office, not through End of Life Choices Oregon. And she was commenting on how because we saw them about a week before, and I took them a booklet all about the process, they hadn't received any written information from the doctor's office about this process. So luckily we'd given them that book, so they knew what to expect, and there was a video in there they could watch. So even doctors' offices who do this regularly don't always think to have, and we'll be, of course, relaying that information, because people need to have written information in their hands at that time. They're not retaining information, and it's such a complex process, and there's a lot of variables there. So we were really happy to be able to kind of fill in that gap for them in this particular instance as well.
What other questions do folks have? or if there are no questions, what other things should we be
Yeah.
thinking about?
I
Yeah,
have
Connie.
another one. I noticed the obituaries that are printed are very, and I had this conversation with a woman of color, but they're all very white male. It seems like it's a thing of the past and it's expensive. The woman of color I was speaking to said that, yeah, it was really expensive to have it done printed. And so I'm curious, what thing are you seeing in the industry now that's newer, that's not the typical 80s, 70s thing we might have experienced, besides having death doulas, that's new, and newer conversation. But what are you seeing that's kind of on the forefront of new possibilities in your industry?
Well, first of all, one of the reasons why obituaries these days are so expensive is that classified ads, like for the Oregonian, have so decreased. And so they're making up for their ad revenue with obituaries. And so if you want to put an obituary in a paper, it's going to cost you a small fortune. So what we offer is that people can put an obituary on our website, and it's part of our service. There's no charge for it. And if some family members insist on having an obituary in a paper, we say, well, put the smallest version in there and then put the larger version on ours, because it's not going to cost you anything more. There are websites out there that you can post obituaries on. I prefer to say that by using our website, our obituary website, we have more control over, because if someone doesn't use our website and then I'll get a call asking where the service is, I don't know, because I don't have access to that. The other thing that people are telling me, and unfortunately we live in a society of scams, is that some people will see an obituary in the paper and then they'll call the wife or the spouse and want to sell them something or whatever. And so people are really reluctant to put obituaries in the paper, and if there's a funeral, they're concerned that maybe their house will be unoccupied for the time of the funeral, and that someone can go and rob. We usually tell people to appoint someone to stay in your home while the funeral is taking place, so that it's occupied and you're not vulnerable. So those are some of the things. Before it was a society where, you lived in the same place for years. And so you would want to know, about someone that may passed away. But we're such a mobile society. And a lot of times parents go live where their grandchildren are. So they're not even part of the community of where they were. So sometimes obituaries, they put it in the paper back, like where I'm from, New Jersey. But that's about all they can do. And so, again, it's kind of a combination of factors regarding obituaries. But we, in the one of the pages we have, we don't call it an obituary. We say everyone has a story. And the whole idea is to be able to include that. And then we always say, the spouse or the child, they don't have to do it themselves. Delegate it to someone who says, what can I do to help? And then just by gathering information for that story, you've helped, again, memorialize that person in words. And so I don't think obituaries really should ever go out of style. I think it's just, technology should have a role in it. And we link our obituary on our website to a Facebook page. And so then people can send it out that way. So does that answer your question? Okay.
I've also seen, we haven't worked extensively with this, but I've seen where there are like free memorial websites that you can have where people can add stories and add pictures, and it can be kind of a group effort to memorialize somebody there. And I know even sites like Caring Bridge that can help support families through an illness. People can post photos in there and stuff. So that could even kind of turn into a memorial on its own. But yeah, there are definitely some free online memorial website type places that are popping up.
And I've seen people write their own ahead of time.
Yeah. Because they want to know
I
what's
actually-
going to be said.
Exactly. I was in tears laughing one day because a client brought me her obituary she wrote ahead of time. And I think she missed her calling. She could have been like Irma Bombeck. It was so beautifully written and so funny that you know, I have a feeling that when it does actually come out online, it'll probably go viral.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the other thing I wanted to mention too, speaking about that, is that I'm really an advocate of what's called a living funeral. If you've ever read Tuesdays with Maury. So for instance, if your parent or someone's going to be celebrating, I mean, even a birthday, it doesn't have to be like a 90th birthday or whatever. If they're having a birthday and you suspect that maybe the end is near and people are gathering, so do a living funeral. I mean, and record it. You know, be able to say what, I mean, that person is sitting there and they're receiving all of the love that you would be speaking at a funeral, and they wouldn't have a chance to hear it or even respond to it. So the whole idea is to have this living funeral and record it, and then perhaps later at their memorial service, play it. You know, play what you've gathered in terms of this living funeral. So anyway, I just think there's some great ideas out there.
That's
I
amazing.
received a question as a direct message. The question is, what are the restrictions in Washington state about scattering ashes? I don't know if anybody here can speak to that.
Well, I think, well, all right. So I don't know. I'm not reading this from any legal page or anything, but I think scattering ashes is kind of like, who's going to know you're doing it? I think there's like an element of that to it. Deborah, do you know any more about that officially?
Well, not necessarily Washington. I mean, Oregon, you are not allowed, well, you're discouraged. I mean, who's going to find out? You know, I mean, golf courses, public, I mean, private areas, you're not allowed to, you know, take the scattering urn and do it that way. You can, we just tell people, if you do have a favorite golf course, just take a small packet and then just pretend you're brushing some sand out of the cuff of your pants or something like that. So just do it very, very discreetly. The nice thing about, so there's solidified cremated remains called parting stone. So a lot of times people can take the different stones, because there's about 30 stones to a body. And I know we've done this with someone that's been close to us. You know, they took his stones and then they went to different places that were his place, and they just placed the stone there. You know, they didn't have to worry about pouring cremated remains. And I mean, you can do that anywhere. The best story I read was someone was wanting to scatter cremated remains from the top of the Ferris wheel at Disneyland. You know, I mean, they had to shut everything down because here's all these cremains scattering. So no, you can't scatter at Disneyland. But you could probably put a parting stone somewhere in Disneyland. So we always tell people to be discreet. You know, if you want to scatter at the ocean, you know, we just tell people just to do it when other people aren't there. You don't want to traumatize children thinking that, you know, the sand that they're playing with is actually cremated remains, and just things like that.
I have a question for Jennifer. When naming an executor, do you recommend naming a family member or a neutral third party?
Well, the lawyer answer is it depends. Everybody's family dynamic is different.
Yeah.
Most of the time we've gone away from the term executor and we use personal representative. It's just nicer. But it really depends. Some families, it's not going to create a power play or any issues. Other families, it will. Some families don't have family members that can handle that, either emotionally or mentally. So really, it comes down to the family dynamic. Sometimes they want to appoint the oldest. I've had people come in and say, oh yes, we need our oldest because he's a boy and he's the oldest. And I'm like, okay, does he have any felonies or bankruptcies? Well, yeah, he's got 3. Actually, he had 5 bankruptcies, one after each divorce. And I said, well, so he's not good with money and he doesn't have a good picker. So maybe he's not the best option. Oh, we should probably use our daughter. She's a financial advisor. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it really, as I said, it depends on the family, it depends
Yeah.
on the situation. I say that you don't truly know somebody until you divorce them or go through probate with them. And I say that tongue in cheek. But it can create some big drama if you use the wrong person, and most people know what their family dynamic is.
Yeah.
I also have people who say, well, I'm just going to name my brother. Well, how old is your brother? 92. You probably need to name an alternate in a different generation. So we have those conversations.
Oh my God. Thank you.
Jennifer, does it always have to be someone in the family that you name as a personal representative?
No, it doesn't. It does not. You can name anybody you want. Be a friend, it can be a family member, it can be a professional fiduciary. If you don't have a will and you go by the state intestacy laws, it's anybody who has a claim on the estate. So it could be a family member that would inherit. It could also be a creditor. I've seen it happen where somebody dies, they really don't have any family or nobody who wants to deal with it, but they owe money on a mortgage or on medical bills. And it's kind of a race to the courthouse if you don't have somebody named. So it's important to decide who you want and get it in writing.
And to let that person know in advance. My spouse was named the PR for her uncle's estate in Arizona and was not told about it until after he passed. So please communicate your wishes.
Yeah. Well, and I want to add, go ahead.
I just had somebody who was named as her grandmother's power of attorney and guardian and trustee when she was 22 and has been holding this position now for like 15 years. So you need to think about who you're using and let them know and make sure it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, what I want to add to that was in terms of veterans, it's so important then really as organizers and as death doulas, really to have their discharge papers available, because if they want to use the National Cemetery, the one here in Portland, Willamette National, it's crucial because if you don't have, I call the DD 214 or their discharge paper, their golden ticket, because that verifies right there. I email that to St. Louis and it's a done deal. You know, we can get that person buried. We just had an experience. The gentleman died September 6th. All we had was like a little discharge, like a selective service. They could not find his records in St. Louis. We waited 6 weeks. The family finally decided to use another funeral home. The next day, I finally got a call from eligibility in St. Louis saying, we finally found his records. He's finally going to be buried this Friday, 2 months later. And this was really obviously quite stressful on the family. So really as organizers, if they're a veteran, if you find out they're a veteran, and if you can get their discharge papers, I used to tell people, you know, don't worry about if I have the social security number and that, but if they can't find their records and eligibility, there was a fire years ago, then if they really do want that person interred at Willamette National, it's going to be a while. With cremated remains, it's really not that crucial because you can, you know, inter them anytime. But with a casketed burial, this was a long time. 2 months is a long time.
Thank you for that. We will
That's
put
something
that
we do when
checklist.
we do our estate planning binders. Is there's a memorial section, and we say if you've done any pre-planning, put the paperwork there. If you have a DD 214, put the paperwork there. Put everything in place so people can find it when they need it, because you don't want them to have to dig through everything when they're distraught.
Yeah. And then I also was going to add this registration document, you know, the information necessary for a death certificate. It's nice to have that all in one place. We just served a family where, you know, the attorney, you know, has this wonderful binder, but we couldn't find the social security number anywhere. We couldn't find birthplace, you know, all the important things for the death certificate. And we really don't want to submit the death certificate until we have the social security number, because if we don't, then we have to go back and amend it. So that, I mean, it's just kind of a mess. So this whole idea of being able to have as much paperwork available as possible and doing that research and doing that planning years ahead is so crucial for, I mean, the cases that we see that turn into nightmares. And it's, I mean, death is not easy for any family member, but you add on, you know, where and when can you bury, it's even more stressful. And so we're finally grateful. I told them that we probably would have fireworks at the cemetery just to celebrate, you know, that we finally were able to get them buried. And then the other paperwork, the other form is this appointment of persons to make decisions for disposition. That's valuable for people who don't have family, who want to appoint someone, and Jennifer can tell you more about this, but there's no financial obligation. It just appoints someone to sign the cremation paperwork. That's really all it is. And then, you know, money can be set aside by this person, but I've given this form to hospice workers who have found it very valuable. Doesn't have to be notarized, just has to be witnessed by 2 people. But I mean, that's
Deborah,
really,
if you'll share that form with me, we'll
I
send
will.
it out afterward to everyone who registered today. We've had such a lively conversation. We're already at 5 o'clock, and I'm sorry that I have to gently cut us off. But I hope that everyone will come back next month, the first Wednesday, December 6th. We're going to be talking about giving back, and we're going to have folks from some of our favorite local charities come talk about the items that you can donate as you're doing your Swedish death cleaning, that you can donate to the organizations to benefit our community. So that'll be Wednesday, December 6th from 4 to 5. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your great questions, everybody, for the conversation. And as Deanna said, for holding the space. And I hope everybody has a great evening.
thank you.
Take care.
Thank you again.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for coordinating it, Whitney. And Jean did a fabulous job as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Always.
Thank you to the team. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.